Welcome, students of Form 3B. Welcome to this video about different types of government. So in this video, we're going to talk about what government is and what different kinds of governments we have, mainly in the Caribbean, but those that we have in the Caribbean, we also have worldwide. It would be, like always, very smart to take in front of you paragraph 3, paragraph 1 actually, and chapter 3 of your book so that you know what I'm talking about. So chapter 3, paragraph 1, take it in front of you, and we are talking about different types of government in the Caribbean. And what are the learning outcomes of this paragraph? What are the learning outcomes? At the end of this topic, you will be able to differentiate. Differentiate means distinguish, but it's more than distinguish. You gotta recognize and make a difference between different kinds of government systems in the Caribbean. So you have to say, okay, there are Republican government types, there are parliamentary government types. This can be the head of state there. This is the government there. These are nominated, these are elected. So you gotta differentiate between them. Yeah, in the Commonwealth Caribbean, and the Commonwealth is everything that's connected with the former British Caribbean. Yeah, so differentiate between among the types of government systems in the Commonwealth Caribbean. So we're mainly going to look at the English Caribbean, but I'm also going to look at Curacao, and we're going to start a little bit with looking at, okay, what kind of government do we have here on the island of Curacao? But the main topic of this paragraph is differentiate among the types of government system in the Commonwealth Caribbean, and keep in mind the learning verb, differentiate. The concept of government. A society or sociedad is made up of individuals who live and work in groups. We've talked about this before in one of my earlier videos of chapter 1. And all these individuals who work together in groups have goals, needs, and interests, which at times may competition, and sometimes conflict with others. So sometimes you just want to make money and I want healthy air, and these can conflict. Sometimes I want more tourism on Curacao, but other people want better infrastructure so that you have less traffic jams. These interests conflict with each other. You can solve this conflict, but primarily at first sight, these interests collide, they conflict with each other. And an interest is something that is important for a certain group because it develops that group. I'm going to come back to the word of interest a lot in this chapter. So they have goals, needs, and interests. Goals, needs, and interests. Necesidad nan, meta nan, y interest nan. Ja, meta nan, necesidad nan, y interest nan. So we've seen these societies, these individuals and groups have goals, needs, and interests. May sometimes compete, sometimes they're like, which one is the most important? Is it health? Is it the economy? Is it tourism? Is it infrastructure? Is it education? Or is it entertainment? And sometimes conflict with each other. There needs to be a means by which these conflicting goals and interests can be managed and regulated. So these conflicting goals, like health and economy, or tourism and good infrastructure, at first sight, they may be conflicting. They do not go well together. And we need to manage these. Yeah, be managed and regulated. Everybody cannot just do what they want. And how do we achieve that? Normally, the management of goals and interests achieved through the promotion of norms, like how to interact together. If you meet each other, do a box. If you meet each other at the street, you say bon dia. We don't steal from each other. We don't offend each other. These are unwritten rules, the norms. And the use of legislation. So we use unwritten rules about how we should behave, but we also use written rules about how we should behave to manage and regulate our ever conflicting goals and interests. This is what we do. And the body, we use legislation, so we write laws in very thick books and we write everything down. You cannot steal from each other, you cannot kill each other, you cannot pretend that I'm somebody else and ask you to give me money. There's identity fraud. You cannot hack into my computer. These are all things we have written down, and this becomes legislation. The rules that we have written down in a lot of official books. And the body responsible for managing a country's rules and legislation and managing and regulating interests is called the government, like you can see here. In Pavimento, Nostro llama esse aqui é governo. That's the body, like the organization responsible for a country's regulations and competing and conflicting interests of the citizens. That is the government. So we've seen sometimes our interests collide, conflict with each other. The things we want don't always go well together. That's why our norms need to be regulated and managed. And not our norms need to be regulated and managed, but our interests need to be regulated and managed. This happens by norms, unwritten, but it also happens by legislation, and it also happens by the government who makes legislation, writes the rules, official rules, and manages the conflicts and competing interests between their citizens. That is the government. Let's continue. What is the Caribbean situation? How is it in the Caribbean? Well, the majority of CARICOM member states are former British colonies. So in the history time, the 16th, the 17th, the 18th, and the 19th century mainly, European countries had a lot of colonies in the Caribbean. For instance, Britain, but also France, but also Denmark, and also, of course, the Netherlands. They had colonies in the Caribbean. And as colonies, these states were subject, in Hollands, onderworpen. They were like under the control of Britain. And here we see that still, some countries still have a very tight relationship with Britain, because in some flags of Caribbean countries, you see in the left corner, you see the British flag. You should see it now. Aguila, for instance, is still connected to Britain because you see the British flag in its flag. And also Barbados used to be a British colony, and also Jamaica used to be a British colony. Yes, and so other countries also used to be British colonies. Yes, and you see it sometimes because you see the British flag in the corner of some Caribbean countries, for instance, that of Aguila. This means they were not independent, ze waren niet onafhankelijk, non nota independiente, so they didn't have everything to say about themselves. They were under British rule. The situation has changed. La situación cambia. And the member states of CARICOM now have different types of, so here you see the flag of CARICOM, and a lot of countries, like for instance, Jamaica and Belize, and even Curacao is now an associated member of CARICOM. They are now members, but the countries in CARICOM, they have different kinds of government systems in place. So the countries that are members of CARICOM, there are different types of government systems nowadays in place. And of course, we're going to talk about those more in part 2 of this video. But the member states of CARICOM nowadays have different types of government systems in place. And we're going to talk more in the next video about that different government types. For now, when we're looking at the map and we see the different government types, we see what we call a key in English, and in Dutch it would be a legenda. And perhaps you've learned that at class 2 or class 1, I hope, or at Fundeshi, basisschool. But a legenda, that is where by colors there is like symbolized what each color means. So there is like the explanation of each color. For instance, orange means British Overseas Territory, green means constitutional monarchy, and purple means republic. For now, it isn't that important what each color means. What is important is that you recognize that there are different government systems in the Caribbean. There are different government systems in the Caribbean. For instance, Jamaica is green, and when we look at the color here, that means constitutional monarchy. So Jamaica has a constitutional monarchy. But we also have Guyana. Guyana is, as you can see, is purple, and purple means that it's a republic. And for now, it's not really that important that you're able to explain that. Later on, it is. So we see that the Belize, for instance, is also a constitutional monarchy. But for instance, Curacao is also a constitutional monarchy, and Trinidad and Tobago is a republic. So each country in the Caribbean has a certain kind of government system. Yeah? And in the Netherlands, we are a constitutional monarchy. That's weird, right? Because Pik Pisas isn't a king or something, and I'm also not the king, and you're also not the king. So what's going on? We are part of the Netherlands kingdom. We are a part of the Netherlands kingdom. So the country of Curaçao is a part of the Netherlands kingdom. And the king and queen, the king is Willem-Alexander, and the queen is Queen Maxima Zorreguieta from Argentine. So she also speaks Spanish. So our king and queen, they are the king and queen not only of the European Netherlands, that way, across the Atlantic, not only there. They're not only king and queen of the European Netherlands, so 9,000 kilometers farther away, but they're also king and queen of Aruba, Saba, and a lot of other islands. Yeah? They're king and queen of Sint Maarten, Saba, and Statia, and king and queen of Aruba, Bonaire, and Curaçao, the ABC Islands. So that's why we are a constitutional monarchy, because there also are king and queen, and even in other words, there also are head of state. King Willem-Alexander is our so-called head of state, like you can see here. And Mr. Pisas, Mr. Gilmar Pisas, he is our prime minister, yeah, but he's not our head of state. He's only our prime minister. And each country in the Netherlands Antilles, sorry, in the Netherlands Kingdom, each prime minister in each country of the Netherlands Kingdom, that is correct, the Netherlands Kingdom, each country of the Netherlands Kingdom has their own prime minister, but they all have one head of state, and that head of state is Koning King Rij Willem-Alexander. Only one. He is the head of state of our constitutional monarchy. So I hope this was helpful. At the end of this topic, we'll be able to differentiate among the types of government found in the Caribbean. If you want to subscribe, you can do that below or here. If my button really comes here, you can subscribe here. And if you can want to ask questions, you can do that also below. And if you want to proceed to the next video, you can do that over there, because there is part 2 there, part 2 of this video about different types of government. I hope to see you in my class, and for now, a well-meant goodbye. Don't forget to subscribe.